Do 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 da 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 da. Boom. Anyway, so yeah, this is the Grass is Greener program,
And we are having a lot of technical difficulties.
yeah,
So,
yeah. No, it's yeah, so I wonder if I can get at this from general user. We're constantly doing things here at the station to improve everything and make it better. Unfortunately, sometimes they decide to do things to improve things, like right before I'm going to be on the air, and then suddenly something is not working. So let's see. Let's
Well-
see if we can. The computer is now rebooted, so now I can look at and put in Zoom. We can't get the theme music today, but we can maybe see if we can get our guest
Yes.
now. I'm not sure that this will have the. Is it signed in? Okay, it's no. Is it? Well, I don't know how to sign in, so maybe we do still need someone to sign us in here because I don't have this memorized. I'm just used to having it all signed up. So yeah, I am Gary Grass. I am the host of the program. Very very proudly speaking live on the air now with nothing at all working, and we do have a guest that we are expecting. Hopefully, someone who will be patient and remain in the room. Oh, look! Wait a second. What? It's someone has taken control of my computer from behind the scenes and is trying to get to where I need to be now so that I can get to my guest. That's nice. That's very nice. Maybe.
Well, hold on with us, folks. And
yeah.
we do have a really good show coming up. It's on Gaza.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, yes. If we are able to contact our guests, we have some doctors who have been in Gaza and working there for Doctors Against Genocide. And so we hope to interview them about what they've seen, what things are like.
Yeah, I mean, I know I have a lot of questions, so it's
So-
like, it's and it sounds like a great program if we can get it started. We're only 3 minutes in, so I hope that means that everyone is patient.
We do apologize to everyone,
Yeah, I mean, it's local
especially
radio.
our guests.
Yeah, I know. There is a certain advantage to pre-recording a show and not doing it live. It's a little more work, but it does avoid this type of thing, which we've been having a reasonable amount of actually.
Mhm.
And it's there's a nice feel to like coming in and just doing it live and like not
Yeah.
like taking pieces of audio, because I mean we typically, when we do it at home, right, which we started doing that with COVID, right.
Mhm.
We started just putting our own programs together, record someone. We don't have the fancy studio equipment. I've got one fairly nice microphone that we share, and someone will show up via Zoom and we'll take the program and we'll put it together. We'll do a 40-minute Zoom and another 40-minute Zoom, and we'll put them together. And if it's a little too long or a little too short, we can speed it up or slow it down. We can take out anything that's like may violate FCC rules or all this chit chat in between. It's like, oh yeah, we'll come back on the other link. We'll just cut all that stuff out. We just put it all together and we upload it, and we know it's all going to work. Because we have a little time to do it, and if it doesn't work, then we say, "Hey, Zav, we couldn't get a show together. Can you just rerun an old show?"
Mhm.
But the way this works currently, oh look, we're
We have a doctor. with
well,
us.
we don't have control of the
we
thing.
don't yet.
Let's ask, since we have someone showing up in the room now. Hello, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, it's nice. It's nice not to have to like ramble amongst ourselves here anymore. So yeah, if you've been listening to, I don't know if you can have you been hearing what's going on, but we had some technical difficulties getting started, but now we're all here,
Awesome.
and so
We
that's
have both
great.
doctors with us.
Well, we have at least one person
We
in the
at
room.
least have one. We have Dr. Thaer
Yeah.
Ahmed, and I apologize if I just didn't do justice to how you say your name.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Oh, good. And are you with, like the other doctor, are you with Doctors Against Genocide?
No,
No.
I am a board member of the Palestinian American Medical
Oh,
Association.
okay, great.
Yeah. Yep. And I'm an ER doctor based in Chicago.
Okay.
All right. Well, okay. So at least you're not contacting us in some weird time zone where you're distant from us, and it's like the middle of the night or early morning or something. So
Yeah, that's right.
All
so
right. So you were recently in Gaza, was it? Or
Yeah.
you?
Well, I was there in 2024, early
Mhm.
2024, and was recently rejected as I tried to enter on June 19th. And so we've kind of been, I've been to Gaza, I've been going back and forth for the last 15 years, just working on different local healthcare projects and trying to build up the healthcare capacity. And this is something that a lot of international doctors are experiencing in recent months. We're seeing a more than 50% denial rate at the border for specialists and volunteers who are trying to enter Gaza to help. And these rejections are coming from the Israeli government, and they usually come without any rhyme or reason. And you don't really figure it out until the very last second when you're showing up at the border with your bags packed full of, infant formula and medical supplies.
okay. Yeah, Betsy's like desperately gesturing to me that her headphones are too loud. So I'm like, trying
Sorry
to trying
about
to
that.
trying to listen, but also trying to multi-process here. It's very difficult. So, yeah, I mean, how many people are? I mean, you can't comment like directly as to exactly what's there right now because they wouldn't let you in. But who is on the ground there right now? How many people
Yeah.
have they let through? How many? What's the?
Yeah, I mean, so the way that this works is everybody sort of enters under the banner of the World Health Organization, and they organize these convoys that will enter into Gaza every Tuesday and Thursday. And generally, the makeup of these convoys will be people who are aid workers, logistics officers, or operations folks, as well as medical professionals. And you have limited number of seats on these convoys. They're usually trucks that are driven by the UN in coordination with the WHO. And so, any given rotation on these Tuesdays and Thursdays every single week, typically you'll see between 20 and 30 people entering or supposed to enter and applying to enter. And always you will see a portion of them being rejected. And oftentimes it is the medical professionals that are getting rejected in this case. We're seeing, like I mentioned, 50% denials. So, on any given time in the Gaza Strip, in terms of international aid workers and medical professionals, you're thinking that there are probably between 30 to 50 folks. And some of these people are on long deployments, like people who work with the nonprofit UK Med. That's sort of like similar to IMC in the United States, the International Medical Corps. So they get a lot of their funding from the UK government. You'll see them there and they're deployed and they're in Gaza for 2 months, 3 months. You'll see people with Doctors Without Borders who go for minimum 2 months. Sometimes they extend it to 6 months. And then you'll see folks like myself and the other doctor who is going to join, who will volunteer. We are not on salary for any of these NGOs, and we'll go in for 2 to 4 weeks. And so, generally speaking, from the American volunteer doctors at any given time, you'll see a handful of us, maybe 4 to 6 of us. Sometimes it can be as high as 10. But the problem is, as this has raged on for 22 months, the access has gotten more and more restricted, and the ability to be able to work and work effectively has also dramatically changed. And what I mean by that is, so even if you're able to get boots on the ground, even if I'm able to enter Gaza tomorrow, the issue has been that there is this suffocating blockade that is being imposed on the Gaza Strip by the Israeli military that medical supplies are not following. And so things like scalpels, band-aids, rubbing alcohol, antibiotics, anesthetics, all of these things are in critical shortage throughout the Gaza Strip. And that's something that as American doctors who volunteered there, we're not used to that. I work in the south side of Chicago at a trauma center, and I've got all the resources in the world that I'm able to mobilize anytime there is a mass shooting or anytime there's a 5 or 6 car pileup. That's not the case in Gaza. Instead, what you're seeing is that you are seeing people who are getting injured in airstrikes, tank shellings, drone strikes. They're being rushed to these hospitals, and the doctors that are working there are handcuffed and unable to help. And really, when we were there,
not literally
we are
handcuffed
looking.
most times. Not
Yeah. No, I mean it depends, right? It depends on the situation. Sometimes these hospitals have been raided and put under siege, and a lot of these folks get abducted. And we know that there are more than 200 Palestinian healthcare workers who are in
my
Israeli
gosh.
prison right now, and more than 1,000 that have been killed. But the point is that when we were there as U.S. doctors, it took a while for us to get acclimated, to adjust, and we had to turn to our Palestinian colleagues who were really showing us and doing some really incredible things. I mean, they were MacGyvering so much stuff while we were there, just figuring out how we can make some sort of string into a tourniquet and just making things last longer than they should. They're normally disposable, and just trying to figure out ways that you'd be able to reuse them. And then the other part of it was the skills. I mean, I've never had to do a trauma procedure on a patient on the floor of a hospital, let alone on a dirty floor that's kind of soaked in blood. And they were showing me really how to just
Oh, how
adjust to
terrible.
that. And so it's really, it's something that doesn't leave you as a U.S. healthcare provider when you enter there. It's something that makes you feel, obviously it makes you feel a type of way where you come back here to the States and you feel like, hey, I got to communicate this. I've got to share the stories, but I've also got to talk to the decision makers, the policy makers, the people in Congress, in the Senate, at the State Department, in the White House, and let them know what I saw and try to do what we can in this country to make a difference.
I mean, one of the first things you said that really struck me is you're talking about the number of people going in, the number of people there at any given time. You said 30 to 50. I was like, well, what is the pre-war population of Gaza? I mean, it's not like millions. I mean, it's like there's a ton of people there, or were.
Yeah,
Um,
that's exactly right. I mean, you're talking about before October 7th, there was around 2.2 million people. We think that at least 100 to 150,000 have left the Gaza Strip and gone to either surrounding countries like Egypt or Jordan or other places if they had dual citizenship. And we think that there are likely close to about 100,000 that have been killed in the process. The official death toll is at 65,000, but everybody that's been on the ground and that has worked there knows that that's a severe undercount, just given the circumstances. And, the other thing that's really, I think I would encourage people to take a look at the map of the Gaza Strip. It's a very small area. It's less than the length of a marathon, and it's about 6, 7 miles wide at its widest. And what's happening now, as this rages on for 22 months, is that area it continues to shrink with respect to where people can go. It's either the Israeli military has occupied a portion of it, or it's under forced displacement orders where these people have to find other spots that they can resettle in. And so you've got this massive overcrowding problem. You've got this massive displacement issue that has its own public health concerns associated with it. And then you've got this military that's continuing to operate very intensely in different parts of the area. That's what makes it so problematic. It's, we've got people who are on the move constantly being forcibly displaced. You've got doctors, nurses, and first responders locally who are being killed or injured or being abducted. And then you've got international volunteers who are trying to enter, and half of them are not able to get in because they're being turned away at the border.
well, I mean, you've got all these modern hospital buildings, right, that are designed to be operating under just regular sort of urban circumstances, right? And then they've been every single one of them that hasn't been destroyed has at least been damaged by bombs, missiles, whatever the Israelis have thrown at them, and the severe shortages. And it's like so you're basically dealing with like a military field hospital, from the ruins of an actual really
Modern
advanced
hospital,
modern
yeah.
medical center, right?
That's an excellent point, and I think that's something that we have not really been able to dive deep into with respect to mainstream media here in the United States. Oftentimes, they'll say, there was 36 hospitals in Gaza before October 7th, and now there's 18 that are partially functioning. But what does that actually mean? It's what you described. I mean, we're talking about hospitals that have either been damaged, the infrastructure is sort of falling apart. You're talking about not having the materials that you need and a constant influx of patients that are coming in because the hospital's being bombed, but so are all of the camps and the shelters and the homes, and so it's really it's to even say partially functioning, I think, is misleading, and I don't think that that's the word I would describe. What I would say is you've got these areas where people are showing up where they know the doctors are at, and they're just hoping that the doctors may have some medicine that they're able to use. And I'll give you an example. In Gaza City, which is undergoing a new Israeli military offensive, but is also the area that they just declared a famine in, there are two hospitals there that are currently functioning with doctors in it, and the lights are on. But these hospitals, both of them, Al Ahli Baptist Hospital and Shifa Hospital, they don't have a functioning CT scanner. So if you come in with some sort of injury and you're complaining of belly pain, or you have some sort of severe headache after shrapnel flew through your window or into your tent, they're actually putting you in the back of an ambulance and having you drive about 15 minutes to this old clinic that still has a functioning CT scanner, and then bringing you back. I'll tell you what, in this country, at my hospital, if I did something like that, I'd be breaking the law, because I should never be putting an unstable patient or somebody that has a chance to their health could deteriorate. If I put them in the back of an ambulance, I should never be sending them away from the hospital. But in Gaza, there's no choice because of the damage that's been inflicted, because of the targeting of the healthcare system. And so that's not really a hospital. What it is there's a doctor in a room, and then he's hoping that he can figure out what he or she can do to help you, and then may have to send you on your way somewhere and hope that you can survive the journey. And there's a lot of people that don't survive it. So, and that's why there are 15,000 people on the emergency evacuation list in Gaza right now. 15,000 Gazans, Palestinians, who have to leave Gaza to get emergency care, life-saving care, who need to leave. No, these are people who are on a list.
But they're on a list. But
yeah,
what's the chance that Israel will allow them to leave?
It's, probably less than 2% of people since the breakdown of the ceasefire have been able to leave on this list. We know that 700 of them have died waiting so far. We know that the United States, the Secretary of State Marco Rubio, has suspended these visas last week for Palestinian children who are coming to the States. And out of that 15,000 in these 22 months, under 100 Palestinian children have come to the U.S., one of the obviously major areas where you would hope would be accepting these patients temporarily and then sending them back after they get the treatment that they need. But Marco Rubio said he wants to suspend it and look into this further after there were some right-wing trolls on X basically calling it a Palestinian invasion. Less than 100 kids in 22 months who've had their limbs blown off or have these critical injuries from bombing came to the United States. None of it was paid for by the U.S. government. Not a single taxpayer dollar went to this. It was all nonprofits that were covering everything. Well, that's out of the question now. And so the only way that you get out is if somehow your case gets elevated with the foreign governments of the world. And so France has intervened and been able to evacuate 20 or 30 people. Italy, the same thing, as well as the UK. They announced last month that they want to take in more kids. They really haven't taken in any. And so that, the percentage is very low if you make it on this list. And it used to be better, I would say, in early 2024. The problem was on May 6th, there's really two borders for Gaza. There is the border between Egypt and Palestine, Egypt and Gaza, and then there's the Israeli border between Israel and Palestine there. And the Israelis have taken over the Rafah border, that Egyptian-sided border, and shut it down. And that used to be the main route where people could get evacuated. And so since May 6, 2024, it's just been a trickle of people who have been able to get out. And the last thing I'll mention about that is before October 7th, there was a traditional medical transfer route that existed, and it was from Gaza to the West Bank. so that these Palestinians in Gaza could be treated by Palestinian doctors in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem at the hospitals that are there. And the capacity still exists. But after October 7th, that corridor has been entirely severed, and we've not been able to reestablish that.
So Israel won't let the ambulance through, won't let anyone through.
Yeah, we've seen only a few cases. We've only seen a handful of days, I should say, where they've allowed evacuations to leave through the Kerem Shalom crossing that is between Israel and Gaza. So it's happened, but it's really only happened after high-level intervention. So either the case got some incredible notoriety for whatever reason and went viral online, or there was a government that came in and directly coordinated with the Israelis. And as somebody who's worked on some of these cases, I can't tell you how hard it is to get these governments to sort of, use that leverage, to have that sort of political capital, and then ask the Israelis, we want to get these 20 cases out. And so that number is at 15,000 right now, but it's going to continue to increase, and it's just one microcosm of the overall issues that exist on the ground in Gaza, right? Like, we're talking about medical evacuations and hospitals being hit and doctors sort of being targeted, but also you can say the same thing about water infrastructure and water engineers and desalination plants. You can say the same thing about food security, the fact that no food is being allowed in, that the agricultural land in Gaza is being actively destroyed, and that the farmers are not able to farm the land. And the same thing with shelter. More than 90% of residential buildings have been destroyed. So people are living in tents, makeshift tents, because proper tent material is not allowed in. So we can literally go to every aspect of life and how to sustain life in Gaza. And we can talk for a very long time about how that's been deliberately attacked and sort of obstructed.
Yeah, I remember a story where Israel brought in engineers to help them figure out exactly how to blow up the water plant, and so that people couldn't get water. I mean, just going.
There's a horrifying story from Oxfam in November of 2024. They have 4 Palestinian engineers on their staff, water engineers, and there's a southern city of Khan Yunis. It's one of the more populated, it's a city with a decent amount of people. It's a densely populated urban city called Khan Yunis, and it's actually where that hospital that was hit yesterday. That's Khan Yunis. That's the city of Khan Yunis. And these 4 water engineers were dispatched to go and repair some of the water infrastructure in Khan Yunis. And in order to be dispatched, you have to coordinate with the Israeli military. You have to tell them, I've got 4 guys. Here are their names. Here are their ID numbers. Here's where they'll be leaving from. Here's where they will be heading. Here's the work that they will be doing. Here is the time that they will be spent working. And here are the materials that they will take with them. Well, all of that was done. All of that was coordinated. Oxfam took care of all of that. These guys showed up. They went to work, and all 4 of them were struck with a missile and killed. And so it's not just that, that water work wasn't repaired for the day in this tragic event. It's the fact that Gaza lost 4 Palestinian water engineers. I mean, it's not a dime a dozen, you know what I mean? So it was absolutely devastating. And it obviously is reminiscent of what happened to World Central Kitchen when they had these 7 aid workers who got triple tapped.
Targeted,
especially with the journalists as well, what happens to all of these journalists in Gaza. I mean, these are devastating incidents that take place with ripple effects for the foreseeable future.
Right. The very people that are entitled under international law to the highest degree of protection, that have actually coordinate for their security with Israel, and then they're apparently deliberately targeted and taken out of the equation, so they can't provide any support. I mean, it's there are people who say, well, it's like, I feel like I'm at greater danger because I'm wearing the press gear, right? Because I know they target the press, and it's like, and we've seen doctors targeted too. So it's like, it's amazing that you can still get people even to go and volunteer and try to get in, given the fact that some of these people are targeted. I mean, I mean, you're right. One point I'll make about the journalist point. I mean, there is a Al Jazeera English journalist. His name is Hani Mahmoud. He has stopped wearing his press vest for all of his daily live reporting that he does on the ground. And he said, one of the things he said, which I found
absolutely profound is he said, yeah, I mean, I get it. Just being a journalist doesn't matter whether I'm wearing the press vest or not. In Gaza, we're targeted. But he goes, I started worrying about the people around me, and I wanted to keep them safe. In order to keep them safe, I took off the press vest. And so that was to me really struck me. And you mentioned the doctors that are being targeted, and we have still the pediatrician Dr. Hussam Abu Safia, and the reason I mention him is this is one of the pediatricians who was your last bastion of hope in northern Gaza. He was the director of a pediatric hospital there, but he has written 2 op-eds in the New York Times in the last 22 months. He is somebody who would do daily interviews. He's somebody that had a camera following him around at all different points. And in December of 2024, the Israeli military surrounded that hospital. They raided it and they abducted Dr. Hussam, and he's still been in prison since December 2024 without charge. And we've had all sorts of high profile and highly elected officials who said, it's time for him to be released. You've got to get this guy out of there. This is who we need in any sort of recovery. He's just so knowledgeable. He has so much experience, and he is a part of the community. And he's still languishing away in an Israeli dungeon. So I think,
what's the treatment like in those prisons? Do you know?
yeah, I mean, honestly, we know because of a Physicians for Human Rights Israel report that they went and looked at and they spoke to people who had been freed, and it's absolutely devastating what's happening to some of these prisoners. There is a significant amount of abuse that they're suffering, and there have been multiple cases where people have died in Israeli prisons. One specifically is Dr. Adnan Bursh. He is an orthopedic surgeon and was one of the most famous surgeons in Gaza, like really a pillar of the medical community. Everybody knew who Dr. Adnan was. And Dr. Adnan was abducted from Shifa Hospital when they had raided it, and he was taken to an Israeli prison. And a few months later, his body was naked in the courtyard of their prison, Al-Awfar prison in Ramallah, just dead. And I mean, this is truly, truly devastating. And the reason that this is also so concerning is think about what kind of message that sends to the medical staff in Gaza, the local medical staff that's still in these hospitals. If they did that to Dr. Adnan, one of the most recognizable faces, an internationally renowned orthopedic surgeon, what would they do to any of these other doctors? What would they do to the medical students or to the nurses or to the first responders? So the treatment there is pretty severe, and that's the case for all of the Palestinian prisoners, primarily because the person who is now handling these prisoner affairs is the minister Ben-Gvir, who is a very inflammatory, racist, far-right minister, and he is somebody that really, from time to time, if he feels like he's not getting enough attention, he tries to do the most provocative thing that he can. And part of that is just trying to, whether it's handing out free guns to settlers or visiting Al-Aqsa Mosque or visiting the prisons and sort of taunting the prisoners. I mean, one thing that he did a week ago to prisoners is he printed out pictures of the devastation in Gaza, these aerial photos that showed what they've done to Gaza. And he wanted to show it to all the prisoners, and he would say things like, "Oh, I think your house was in this area, right? This is where your house used to be."
Yeah, that's cool.
So, So, I mean, it's horrible. It's really horrible.
I mean, there's just so much cruelty on display here. I mean, there's like, there's no purpose for any of this other than simply to be like as cruel and evil as you possibly can. I mean, it's just intended to be abusive and inhumane, and it still serves no other function.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's part of why I think that's part of the role that this country can play in all of this, to be honest with you. I mean, we have seen that when the United States, specifically when whoever is in office at the White House is deciding that they're going to apply pressure onto the Israelis to change their behavior, that it works. When President Trump said, "I don't want my inauguration spoiled by a war in Gaza," a ceasefire deal was done. I mean, Witkoff flew out to the Middle East on a Saturday, met with Netanyahu, and then a few days later, suddenly you had a ceasefire deal. And so it's clear, too, that when it comes to our country, there has to be sort of that courage, that moral courage, that principled approach to be able to say, that's it, enough is enough. This went on for 22 months. We're not going to continue to support this. And unfortunately, right now, what we're seeing out of the White House and the State Department is the opposite of that. We're sort of seeing these green lights. We're seeing sort of the rhetoric is very anti-Palestinian rhetoric. Even President Trump from time to time will, in a way that he's trying to insult Senator Chuck Schumer, he'll call him a Palestinian like it's some sort of insult or slur. And so that's just not the sort of leadership that's needed right now, especially if you want to get a resolution to what's happening in the Middle East. Definitely. And it's bizarre for somebody who's so interested in getting the Nobel Peace Prize for them to be sort of acting the way that they are.
Keep in mind the U.S. is, we're giving every type of support imaginable to Israel. We're giving it diplomatic support. We're, vetoing resolutions in the UN. We're interfering. We've restricted our own aid coming over there. We've done all these different things.
The ICC.
We interfered with the ICC, threatened the ICC, and plus we give tons and tons and tons of money and weapons constantly to Israel, that they couldn't carry this out without the U.S. doing all of this. And other countries are gradually kind of slowly dropping out, and the U.S. is still kind of the mainstay.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. Yeah,
and the Democrats are so many of the Democrats are nearly as bad. It's like they're bad enough to be like 100% complicit. I don't know, maybe Trump is 105%, like do more.
Right.
But they're bad enough, right? So.
Totally. I'll give you a couple of examples why this is a bipartisan failure. First and foremost, we know that under the Biden administration, after he had left office, the Israelis publicly said that President Biden basically increased his pressure via rhetoric, but actually underneath the table was giving us everything that we wanted. That came directly from Israeli officials. And then in December of 2024, after Biden had already lost after Kamala had lost the election, our ambassador to Israel, Jack Lew, was sitting there disputing a famine report, the IPC report that came out about northern Gaza, saying that there were famine-like conditions. Instead of using that report to sort of allow food aid to enter, and then after you enter food, you can start to argue terminology and rhetoric. This is our ambassador to Israel bashing the report and forcing it to be withdrawn. They actually put enough pressure because the IPC at the time was funded by USAID. They had to withdraw their report because of sort of the bullying that took place by our government.
Well, and withdrawing the report really saved their AID funding too.
Yeah, right.
No,
exactly.
it didn't.
Exactly. This is just how bizarre. I don't know what timeline we live in, but you're seeing all of these things sort of manifest, and it just really shows the lack of character a lot of our officials have. But for example, I took a delegation of doctors like myself to DC back in January. And we were basically going office to office and just we had a temporary ceasefire at the time. And we were talking to Democratic offices about, this is how humanitarian response should look like. This is where we can step up. This is how we can restore faith in international humanitarian law. And the response from the majority of Democrats was, well, we're not the majority. We're not the majority. Go talk to the Republicans. And to me, I felt that was so cowardly at the time. You may not be the majority right now, so you may not have legislative power, but there's still things that you can do. Especially somebody like Senator Schumer or Representative Hakeem Jeffries, you can talk to the State Department. You can talk to the Israeli embassy in DC. You visited Israel multiple times. You can you can leverage the relationships that you have, but just across the board. And then with respect to the Republican side, despite there sort of being like an America First movement, that sort of like MAGA movement right now, when it came to this subject, you were seeing the hypocrisy on display. Just sort of, like this steadfastness and like we are going to support anything that comes out of Gaza if the Israelis did it. If the Israelis did it, they have our rubber stamp approval. We don't even need to hear the details. It doesn't matter if it's polio. It doesn't matter if it's the journalist that's being killed. It doesn't matter if it's a doctor being arrested. It's sort of, hey, we're going to rubber stamp this. And it's like, it's hard to have a conversation about what's happening and just having this sort of blinders on from both parties.
Yeah, it seems like, you've got the best people out there are like, there's a very small handful, Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, a couple of like really very very progressive people, and then you have occasionally you have someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene who's just so far out of the mainstream that she doesn't follow the marching orders that come through, and she'll say bad things about Israel because she's off the leash, right? She's not yoked like most of the people in the Congress.
Well, she's also the only consistent one. I mean, if you actually look at her things, there's almost something that you respect about her consistency. It's like, okay, I only care about America first. And so I don't care about Israel. And I don't, and who America is to her is a whole different conversation. But I mean, at least there's this sort of consistency in her worldview. She has this idea. So you're like, okay, I understand that. But when you talk about Senator Cruz, Josh Hawley, Lindsey Graham, you talk about all these people, and it just doesn't make sense. You don't have any consistency. And I think, the other person that I would mention that's been really great on this, or two, there's a few people, but, Senator Van Hollen, Senator Welch, these are two senators that actually went and visited the border between Palestine and Egypt, Gaza and Egypt, and they looked at the warehouses that were full of food that were rotting. And so, that's, to me, that's sort of that leadership that's required. You're kind of showing up, you're on the ground, you're as close to being on the ground as you can be. And you're at least, looking at it from that perspective. But, you'd be hard pressed to find more people like that.
So I'm just at this point, on the ground, and I know, I mean, you didn't get in this last round, so I know this is going to be a little bit secondhand, but like, of all the things that are happening right now to the population of Gaza, the lack of water, the lack of food, the lack of medical care just for general ailments, and the fact that they're still being bombed, what are where is the? I mean, I just focus on all of them, but what is the worst threat? How does that break down in terms of the degree of concern with all these different things that are all attacking the population at once?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's three areas of focus right now, specifically that most public health officials, humanitarians, and people who are just interested in a resolution are looking at. The first is the Israelis want to begin a new offensive in Gaza City. And this is, if you look at the map of Gaza, Gaza City is sort of kind of in the northern middle part of Gaza. And this would be catastrophic because what it effectively does, it will forcibly displace 500,000 people in Gaza further south. And it would afford the Israelis a real opportunity at sort of cutting Gaza in half and
dividing
moving
people,
forward.
basically.
Yes, exactly. And then that way you really start pushing the ethnic cleansing aspect of this. I mean, you're hearing reports of them talking to Libyans, to Somaliland, to South Sudan, to all these different countries to take in hundreds of thousands of Palestinians. And this offensive helps them get closer to that, helps it make it more of a reality. And so I think people are very concerned about that because we know that it's going to be a bloodbath. It's going to be an absolute massacre. And it's something that, will only be stopped by sort of international pressure with the Americans leading that. And I just don't see that happening at this point. The second thing is the food insecurity. It's the declaration of famine. I mean, the IPC category 5, which is these catastrophic levels of hunger. What that means is that 2 to 4 people per 10,000 die every day. So you are talking about dozens of people dying as a result of the lack of food. And we just don't see any movement on the ground. Usually when you say there's a famine or there are, we're in phase 4, what happens is you get this mobilization of resources, you get all of these international aid organizations that are able to unlock emergency funding, and then you kind of flood the area with food and you try to get in. The problem is the Israelis are obstructing all of the entry points, but they're also vehemently denying the presence of a famine. And so you have a lot of hurdles that you need to climb or to get over in order to even just address this issue in a proper way.
Well,
and I'd say the final thing.
Yeah, let me say before you get to the final thing. I mean, just in terms of the food stuff, right? I mean, if you've got a handful of people dying out of every 1,000 every day, right? And I mean, first of all, multiply that by the numbers, multiply it by day after day after day. But second of all, those are just the deaths. I mean, if you've got
Exactly.
that many people that are dying, then you must have a ton of people that are in like very, very, very critical position, who cannot
Oh, yeah.
who cannot simply just be like refed regular food. Yeah, they're past the point where they would get refeeding syndrome, and you'd have to like give them like specialty food for recovery from extreme malnourishment, right? I mean, you have specialized supplies you need for that.
100%. You need to have, these are medical emergencies that require nutritional stabilization centers where you're able to monitor these patients and slowly start the process of building up the nutrients and the enzymes and the proteins that they need to be able to digest food again. But the other point about this is the vulnerable populations, and very specifically the children. Even if they survive this miraculously, they are suffering irreversible consequences to their development. They're going to have stunted growth. Their stature is not
So
going
you're
to realize
talking
its full
brain
potential.
damage?
Their immune systems are going to be weakened. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, developmental delays are going to be witnessed in a large portion of kids in Gaza who are food insecure. IQs will be reduced. I mean, that's just the reality of all of this. And I mean, I think that's what's so concerning about what's taking place here, because you have people who are arguing that there is no hunger. So, we're every hour that we're arguing about this every day, you're putting these vulnerable people at really high risk that even if they survive, we're complicating their future. We're gambling their future away. And so that's what's really, I think, with respect to famine and food insecurity, that's the cruelest part about all of this. It's like, if you can survive this, if you can deal with all of that suffering and somehow make it to the other side, it's a lifelong journey now that you have ahead of you, that you're going to be dealing with the struggles of this moment in time where you just didn't have access to food. And the last thing with respect to all of this is the forced displacement, and that's such a public health catastrophe because there is nowhere for them to go. There is no proper shelter. There's going to be a rise in communicable diseases. There's going to be a rise in complications from infectious diseases. So like the common cold, it's going to last longer. There's going to be more complications as a result of that. There's going to be people who are going to die. There's people who should be getting dialysis. They're not going to have access to dialysis. People who have heart disease or diabetes who will have some really horrible complications as a result of that. And so when you have such a big degree of forced displacement and you have the destruction of all of the infrastructure in Gaza, again, that's something that's going to take generations to address, and you're going to have issues as a result of that. So, I mean, these are the things that everybody's sort of talking about.
What about, there's bound to be some, what about women who are pregnant?
Okay, so there are 50,000 pregnant women in Gaza right now. And every month that we've sort of persisted in this assault on Gaza, we've seen the rise in complications like preterm labor, premature rupture of membranes, small fetal growth. So like really, premature babies, as well as severely underweight babies being born with different complications, stillborns, miscarriages, women who are having hemorrhages postpartum that are life-threatening, and that's just all not trauma related. That's purely environment related, right? I mean, there have been really horrifying cases. I'm not going to dig too deep into the details because they're just so gory, of the trauma that is inflicted on all of Gaza, and then you see how it affects pregnant women. And so I would say pregnant women and breastfeeding women are these vulnerable populations that we talk about when you talk about famine, because specifically if the mothers are starving, they're not able to produce the milk that they need to be able to nurse their children. And that's just sort of like that immediate physical aspect of this. But every healthcare provider knows this, and probably every mother knows this. But it also has a psychological impact on the family dynamic, on the relationship between the mother and her child. It has an incredible burden that's sort of placed, and that leads to that's a real health consequence of all of this. So it really is tragic the more you start to peel back the layers of this. And we can get into sort of also just hygiene and the hygiene products and the lack of hygiene products and how that has caused different issues for all different segments of Gaza's population, whether you're a child or an elderly person who needs to be wearing, a diaper or some other sort of protective wear. It's just not readily available. So you see all of these different you see sort of like cardboard being used, plastic bags being used, and then you're starting to see these rise of skin diseases or skin breakdown and complications as a result of that. We can literally go through all. So I guess the summary of that is that there's 100% of the population is affected by this, which is what's so unique about this humanitarian crisis. It's every single person that's in Gaza is affected by this. Whether you are somebody who has no longer earning an income, or you are, the head of a household, or you are a child, or you are a doctor, an engineer, a taxi cab driver, or you are a teacher, a professor, whatever it is, every single person has been affected negatively by what's taken place over the last 22 months. And the more you look into the struggles and the aches and the pains and the suffering, the more you realize that this is not something that a ceasefire is just going to alleviate and fix.
Yeah, let me. I mean, I hate to reduce things to statistics or numbers, because these are all obviously real people, and their individual stories should be recognized. But I recall back when the estimates running out of like the Ministry of Health were like 40,000 or something like that, because they just count the people that they can name, right? And they that's their mechanism was like designed for like really extreme undercounts, right? And you had, I think it was in like the Lancet. I know there was a couple of UN reports that they cited where they talked about this sort of formula where they say, well, we have these direct, killed by enemy fire type of deaths, killed by collapsing building type of deaths, right? And so they took a formula where they said, we'll multiply that by sort of a typical number. We'll estimate conservatively on the low end, like 95th percentile range of what the ratio really is between the number of people who are killed that way and the number of people who just can be expected to die because in a war, like the infrastructure is destroyed and people lose their jobs, they can't pay for stuff, supplies are harder to get, and so you wind up with having just like this increased death toll just because the conditions of life are degraded, right? And but in the cases that they use as examples of these, there wasn't this same type of like intentional, like complete blockade of a small, densely populated area where the water is being deliberately destroyed, the food is being deliberately destroyed, where there's this like intensive effort to destroy the means of life. You can only imagine that the numbers must be tremendous just in terms of how devastating this has been.
Yeah, there's nobody that you'll speak to that's ever been involved in humanitarian relief or emergency response that believes the number that's coming out of the Ministry of Health. And that's because the methodology that the Ministry of Health employs is exactly what you said. They need to have the actual body come through one of the public hospitals. They need to have an ID number, an Israeli issued ID number for a Palestinian, and they need to be able to issue a death certificate.
And so that is the process. Most of the hospital's been blown up.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got a ton of people who are actually also beneath the rubble because we don't have the heavy machinery needed to remove the rubble and be able to recover some of the bodies that are still there. And we know that there are probably over 10 to 12,000 bodies that are trapped beneath the rubble. There are disappeared people who don't have no account for. And then there are people who who have been killed but have never been, because the area is so active that their bodies have not been recovered. And so every single person recognizes that this is a tremendous undercount. The other thing is the Lancet article that you're referring to, you're exactly right. It just uses a generic formula that's been employed in the past and has been found to be accurate. But it's not applicable to Gaza given the certain circumstances that Gaza is under and the lack of access that Gaza has seen, as well as how sophisticated and advanced and intense the Israeli military bombardment has been, right? I mean, you're talking about 2,000-pound bombs, you're talking about tank shells, you're talking about missiles from warships and from drones. You're talking about AI that's being employed in Gaza that, the Haaretz and Times of Israel article had mentioned that every single day, 100 targets are being uploaded into some of these drones and, these strikes are being carried out. So you're talking about a very intense and very advanced military that's conducting these operations. And so I've heard a lot of estimates. I've spoken to a lot of people about it. Ralph Nader has even said that he believes there's 250,000 people that have been killed. And then you can
and that was months and months ago too. I mean, it's just staggering. I mean,
that was last year.
They're measuring how many Hiroshima equivalents of tonnage have been dropped on this little place. It's like, well, how many Hiroshima bombs are they up to now? Right? I mean, and it just keeps growing because it never stops. I mean, pause for an inauguration and then it's back on again.
That's got to have.
And then we do. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say that's got to have a horrible psychological trauma type of thing too, effect on people.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so we haven't even sort of mentioned the indirect, how indirect deaths happen. And so it's like these people would have survived if the war wasn't raging on, but this person who has kidney failure was not able to get the treatment that they needed, so he died. Or this person that had a heart attack could not leave his tent in the middle of the night to access the hospital because of the intense bombing. Well, they died because of the war. It just wasn't a direct bomb that bombed them. So that number is going to take us probably 5 to 10 years to really figure out what that number is at. And you talk about the mental health situation, and this is something that I remind people of, but Save the Children had a devastating report about the mental health of children in Gaza before October 7th. And because it's important to remember that Gaza has seen Israeli military operations in 2009, in 2012, in 2014, and then in 2021. And so if you were 17 years old, you've seen all of this. And what they found is that there was a high rate of mental health issues among children in Gaza. I mean, they found that about 40-some% of the kids were bedwetting, that there was 30-some% that were doing self-harm behaviors. There was a significant portion of them that had suicidal ideation, night terrors. And so I can't even imagine what's the case right now. I can tell you that as far as the efforts to address that, I think most organizations are only doing something called psychological first aid, and that's sort of just being able to make somebody in the moment feel that, hey, they've sort of escaped the danger and they're in like a safe area with safe people. So like if you come to a hospital, you just try to make them feel safe.
That must be very, very hard in Gaza.
Yeah, it's impossible. You're right. It's impossible. It's impossible. And so, that's something, again, mental health usually takes a back seat with all of this stuff because, it's just so difficult to get the specialists to be able to have the space that they need to be able to address these issues. And this is always, mental health issues tend to be more intensive. I mean, it's resource intensive, it's time intensive. And so, this is going to be a deepening crisis, again, even after we're done with this nonsense, even after we're done with this, with this horror. And it's going to take, you talk about, you start thinking about like generational trauma. I mean, this is how you get it.
What would you suggest if people were to try to do something? Is there anything?
I think we want to shift to something a little more hopeful because because the situation is just so dire, and it's like it's like you can almost just go endlessly like, oh, but I haven't told you the worst thing about it yet, right? Yeah. I don't know what the next shoe is it's going to drop that you're going to tell us here, right? So it's like before people just sort of, I mean, because we know some people that are like, oh, global warming, it's like, that's done. We can't save the earth anyway. We may as well just burn all the carbon right now because it's like we're all going to die. And I think it's very easy to get very, very fatigued and feel that way about Gaza. I mean, it's because the news is so horrible. So So
Well,
in
I
the
would say that
last few minutes, make us feel cheerful again.
yeah, no, I will tell you. I mean, I really truly believe, and this is why I've been working on this tirelessly, and I know so many other people have been working on it tirelessly. But our country is where the difference can happen. It is where leverage can be applied. It is where the solutions can come from. And so it really starts locally. It starts with your, you can take a look. For example, I live in Illinois, and I see that we have even our within our own local representatives, our state senators, as well as our state reps. There is different legislation that can be passed in Illinois that directly ties back to what's happening in Palestine in terms of helping that and just sort of getting folks on board and understanding that locally we can begin to start a change. You can see that translate. And I'll give you an example. In November of 2023, my Senator Dick Durbin was one of the first elected officials to call for a ceasefire. And he got a lot of heat for that. And they had a vote about stopping weapons going to Israel, or actually, they had a vote calling for a ceasefire at that time. And 8 out of 100 senators voted for a ceasefire. They basically said, yes, let's get a ceasefire going. 1 year later, Bernie Sanders introduces a JRD resolution that basically says we don't want to supply weapons to Israel because of what we've seen take place. We don't want American weapons being used for this. And you had 16 senators, so that number doubled. And then recently, a couple of months ago, another JRD was introduced by Bernie Sanders, again, a resolution basically saying that let's not supply Israel with weapons. And now you have 28 senators. And so you are seeing incremental change. You're seeing the progress. You're seeing the numbers increase. And I think we can turn up the pressure and we can sort of start talking to our elected officials. We can talk to the congressmen as well as the senators. We can reach out to the State Department. We can ask Marco Rubio, for example. We can write a letter and say, why did you suspend the visas? You should reverse this. I'm just a local concerned American. As well as, I think the second part of this, away from sort of the advocacy space where you're sort of engaging with elected officials, the other part of this is there has been a deliberate effort to dehumanize Palestinians for decades. I mean, forever. It's just the way that the words that we use to describe Palestinians, the otherness, the otherizing of them, the way that you can sort of dismiss what's happening to 65,000 people because it's a land far, far away. We can dismantle that, each of us, just by recalling some of the stories that we see that are emerging. And I think one thing that's really sort of moved me is the story of Anas al-Sharif, the Al Jazeera journalist that was killed a couple of weeks ago. I mean, this is somebody who is 28 years old, has never left Gaza, is a father of 2, is somebody who lost his father about 18 months ago in an airstrike, and is somebody who was reporting every single day on what was happening in Gaza. And he was asking the world, he said, hey, I'm getting direct threats from the Israelis. They're saying they want to kill me. And I'm asking people to protect me. I'm asking the committees and the journalists out there to stand in solidarity. Well, he was killed a couple of weeks ago. And I think the best thing that we can do to sort of move forward is to not just have him be a number, and to remember his story, and to talk about his kids, and to say that this is what's happening to journalists. And I think that resonates with people. And I think we can grow in this movement towards getting some sort of peaceful resolution and having people not be killed. The movement grows, the number of us grows, and the louder that we are, I think the better chance that we are at living in a better world in general, but also in fixing what's happening there right now. And so I think it's possible, and I think it starts, with us understanding the human connection that exists between all of us.
Yeah, I think one of the points that we've made on this show before is like you keep hearing about all these different Palestinians. It's like there are so many of them that are poets, that are artists, that are like scientists and doctors and engineers. This is a people that has just like a ton of achievement, and it's like they're had exhibited so much courage under these horribly adverse conditions. And I have a lot more I want to say right now, but I know we're on our last minute before they're going to cut us off. But there is a lot that's hopeful in terms of everyone wearing keffiyehs and like divesting from Israel, and Israel having so much problems right now with people wanting to leave, all the people resisting the IDF service. there's a lot of good that's going on. There's a lot of progress being made. It's just there's this feeling that like this race. Can anything be fixed before it's all too late for so many people?
Yeah. And that's how I describe it too. I think that's a great way to describe it. It's like sort of this race against the clock right now, and I think that's that can at least alert us to the urgency of this.
So, any last?
No time because
no time.
We're out right now. This is it. Bye bye.